and as we get through the month of March, we all know we have no days off until the 27th. But really just remember these things, because if somebody's seeing this in you, then your kids are seeing this in you. And so just know that we're beacons of education, but also of light to our students and to others. So, yes.
Seems like a great community builder. But really thanks for that. And I just feel like there's so many ways we can like tweak this and like do this for like our kids potentially. Like they also like are probably in like full on like park robot mode.
Please come to the office.
And could use some like
have a visitor.
well. Okay, so the last time we met all together, you were actually able to give me feedback via a new leader survey, a pretty long new leader survey. And then since then, I have gotten my results back. So I wanted to share just some like high-level takeaways that I'm taking from that. So if you go ahead and take 30 seconds and look over our agenda, it's where it says feedback on feedback. So typically we're not posting no feedback, but like some positives that I'm taking away, and then like just some areas of growth that I'm taking away for like the next 9 weeks to be fully hit from growth. Okay, so does everyone feel good? Okay, so there are two big things that I'm taking away. The first one is, how can we get feedback on our actual teaching practices? So we're using this meeting to like prep for teaching, but it doesn't always go like entirely the way we plan when we like try to do this in front of kids. So how can we use these meetings to do that? So we're going to do a little bit of that today with our progressive instruction action plans. The second piece of that is additionally, how can we share some of the learning? Because we all have different, we're a team of 6. We have different strengths in different areas of growth. So like, are we doing our best job in learning from each other, and how can I support in doing that? So one way I'm going to try to do that today is with like our best practice share out. We can then give some feedback on like, did that feel good? Did that feel like the right way to share practices? And then continue to adjust. But want to make sure that you are walking away feeling like, yes, I'm the expert at something, but I'm also like learning how to be good at other things. And I'm feeling like the people on my team also have value to like help me be good at those things. So that's kind of where I'm wanting us to go with our next meetings. And like, we want to continue to like adjust and grow from those pieces of feedback. So I really do appreciate that. Okay. So in these meetings, we're doing a lot. So we're doing assessments, we're looking at data, we're creating action plans, all to the end of achieving that really grand vision that we set in the beginning of the school year. A major part of that vision, though, is hitting our SMART goal. So I've updated our SMART goal progress with our most recent data. So I want you to go back to your agenda, I believe it's in blue, and take 30 seconds to look this over, particularly like where we're falling on like our benchmark goal in comparison to the goal we set for the end of the year. Also, if you want to look at the actual tracker that goes along with this data, I just resent it right before this meeting, so it's at the top of your inbox. It's also linked on this Google Drive, but for some reason this Google Drive takes us to our folder and then you have to re-click it, so if you want to get it quicker, it's in your inboxes.
It's telling me to request access.
Okay. Yeah, so just checking your email is the same thing in your email. But I see your access. I'm accepting you now too. Are you sure you want this one? Or you can have access? Okay. Everyone's already had enough time to read over that. So after you've like had a chance to look over our SMART goal, just like what's top of mind when you kind of compare like where we currently are, and then the growth we've made. Like we're 3 benchmark assessments in at this point. So with the goal we set and then like where we're falling each benchmark.
Seems like we're doing pretty good. We made it past our goal.
Kinda.
We're over 50% that are at mastery or threshold.
Yeah, that was
so
huge.
We're not at 20% mastery, but that's good.
So we're only 2% away from our mastery goal, which to me is, it speaks volumes to where we were in the beginning, which was at 1% or 2% mastery.
Yeah, 2%.
And 8% threshold, and we're literally almost 30% in terms of improvement and growth for our threshold, and we are literally 2% away from meeting our mastery goal. So for one, it's obvious to me that we're going to make our goal. Like, on something that's like some type of catastrophe happens, like we lose power every single day for the rest of the year, or we just stop teaching, we're going to make our goal. Of course not. You know, we're going to make our goal, but I think this also speaks to, you know, us grooming our pedagogy and us becoming better educators, because some of us had some rough numbers in the beginning, and I know I don't know if like you all, I look at everybody else's data. It's not competitive. I'm always looking at kind of data because I'm like, because I'm super smart. But like, we've made leaps and bounds with these kids, and that's, you know, an attribute to us. Obviously, they're willing to learn, but like, just take that in as a little win to us. Kind of like another set of appreciation on top of the names, you know, and academic.
That 36%, like so our mastery score went down like 1%. But we have 36% of our kids in threshold when our goal was 30%, which is huge, which makes me really hopeful that we can move 6% of those kids to our mastery. Like, those kids are so close to being where we need them to be. One thing that I want us to do, particularly in like Get Better Skill Decisions, is like paying close attention to our data, because we're like 50% of our kids are where we need them to be, but being sure that like every single kid has moved. So like looking at these numbers, like, are there some kids who are like not moving that like we need to catch in these last 9 weeks before they take their final assessment to get them where they need to be? So I just want to make sure that like these numbers are including like 100% of the kids that we're teaching. So if you look at our, if you remember from our DEI calendar, we literally have one more benchmark that we're tracking to like hit our goal, like one more test that we need to get to like 20%. So I want us to think like just individually, like what do we each need to do, like in our own classrooms, whether that's something we need to keep doing or something we need to change doing, to make sure that like we are doing our part to make sure that our team hits our goal. What do you think?
I think we have to go back and be critical about, you know, what areas are we struggling with? Where are the standards that we need to really focus in the zone on and to meet our goals both individually, but obviously when we meet our goals individually, we're helping a larger group of folks. So I think it's going to take a lot of time and creativity and really seeing, one, who are my kids that aren't moving, who are my kids that are moving, what is that movement looking like, and how does it affect the overall, you know, batches my data, and then really hitting home to really knock that benchmark out of the park. Kind of similar to how we would do our SLO assessments and what we would target in on those skills to see growth. I think that's what we need to do, because it's not impossible. It can be done. It will be done, but we have to be very critical in thinking.
And I think it's also a matter of looking at your students in like sort of like groups. So your kids who have been meeting that benchmark, those kids are at your threshold, like in primary, when like a kid is almost at their reading level, we call them our golden pen kids. But those kids have, if you push just a little extra, have the most potential of now becoming on grade level, even though they're currently not. So really looking at those middle of the road kids, and not necessarily negating the kids who are below level, but really focusing in on those threshold kids, because they have, at this point, they're almost there. So it's like, what extra can you do? What extra homework, what extra practice could those students receive in order to push them over? But then also using that same philosophy with your students who haven't even been making thresholds. So what is it that they need? Like, is it the tools you've been using hasn't been reaching them, or is it just like this concept is too abstract and you may need to start back at ground zero with them? So really looking at, like, sometimes when I'm analyzing data, I'm looking at my kids who they got it, we're good, my golden band kids, and then my kids who are below, and really looking at strategically what does each of those groups need, and how can I provide that both inside the classroom but then also additional practice outside of the classroom.
What you're saying too, our reading course when we're taking for BPC, we talk about differentiation, and the other course we're taking, we talk about differentiation and like grade targets, and that for me was really helpful, especially now looking back at how I was teaching my whole group and how I'm teaching my guided reading in small group now, and the way that I'm even grouping my students. I realized like there were a lot of students that just weren't moving ahead have something tangible in front of them in order to understand the thought process and strategy behind subtracting, addition, whatever. And then I have some students that just, they can get it, but they have a lot of trouble understanding why they got their answer. So grouping them now based off of that, like perhaps something that we can apply, you know, flex grouping small groups and how you differentiate your lessons, how you try to reach your students and how you try to reach them in order to gain that understanding.
Some of it, like you're saying, the thing now to me is too, like not being afraid to like constantly like change, like your grouping. So like for you two who are teaching like all subjects, like your groupings can be the same for like science and social studies and reading and math, but then also for like the other three of us, like being open to say, well, like I was teaching this standard, so like I am actually using like yesterday's data to support like today's group and like planning like day to day and being open to that. Like I know that we are all like superstar overachievers and like want to be like we plan out, but like are we giving ourselves the flex to like meet student need? And then the other piece, like who are our other people? Because like all the strategies we name right now solely depend on us to like do and plan, but like who are the other stakeholders that your kids have? Like what resources would you be giving to like their families or their parents to potentially like help them out? Like would you recommend like websites for them to use or like things for them to download or whatever the case may be that may help them just get over the hump? Because they have a whole team of people who would like want them to like meet their goal. I think like we're on track to do that. And it's like one of our biggest levers this year has been like using our curriculum instruction plans to like make some growth our next round. So I want us to actually look at those and actually spend some time giving each other feedback so that like your curriculum instruction action plan is as strong as it can be before you like roll it out to teach your kids. I know like the two of us who are focused on reading growth do not have like curriculum instruction action plan. So like based on like your most recent DRA data, like what is the upcoming lesson that you are going to do that is going to hit like one of your targets, you're going to like pull that up and you're going to work on that while like the other three have their plans up. So if you look at the protocol on our agenda, just go down to where it says like curriculum instruction action plans and feedback, it's in purple. And we're like, guys, we're like really good on time. This is making me feel great. So what I want to do is give you like 5 sacred minutes actually to prep. So go ahead and pull up either your lesson plan, your curriculum instruction action plan, and look at it. Like what is spend 5 minutes looking at it. What is the part of that plan that you actually would appreciate some feedback on? Are you constantly stumbling over the same part of your plan? Is it your whole group instruction? Is it your small group instruction? Is it like working with an individual kid? You're gonna have 5 minutes. We're gonna have 5 minutes as a team to prep what we're doing individually. You're then gonna have 1 minute to like give us some context. So for example, this is the standard I'm attempting to reteach. This is like my classroom context, kind of like how I teached it, like how I felt about the lesson overall. You're then gonna have 5 minutes to be in full teacher mode. So like full blown role play. You're gonna be the teacher, we're gonna be your students, you're going to like teach us your lesson, and then we're gonna have 3 minutes to give you feedback. Do we have any questions about that protocol? It's really good? Okay. So I'm actually gonna keep time for this. How about we're gonna take until 2 o'clock to like individually look at our plan that we're gonna like talk about, okay?
Sure.
Julie, can you go to some jams again?
Absolutely.
Thanks. Oh yes. So like one thing I just have to mention when you're saying like a couple of days ago, you're looking at the walking from maybe or even with that, but like if you're doing the make for the game, like how are you like helping them with it? It's like really like you walk us through this. Because like when I want you to do this, are you giving them time? You just talk about it. Are you talking too much? Are you we're gonna like lean into that vulnerability.
Okay. Scroll down.
Are you talking about the bomb? I think you 1 minute to 4 minutes. How much more time do you think we do? Let's get up to like 2 more minutes. Okay, so Julia's gonna, I just went and randomly assigned people an order. So Julia's gonna kick us off. So again, the protocol is that she's gonna have 1 minute to kind of give us an overview. If you don't use that whole minute, that's fine. We're just gonna have 5 minutes of practice. So I do wanna push you to use your 5 minute practice time, and then we are going to have 3 minutes to get to that. Okay?
Alright, so
You can do this in whatever way feels good to you.
alright, so basically, in my CAG AP, I'm gonna be reteaching or just going over figurative language. My kids for the most part have it, but they typically will mess up metaphors and similes because of the using of like as versus the not using of like as, and them understanding an exaggeration versus a hyperbole. They think they're both the same things. Hyperbole. So that is what we're going to be focused on. We're also going to touch on personification just because we kind of working, we're going over figurative language. So that's one standard. We're also going to be working on denotation versus connotation because it kind of falls into figurative language of figuring out when someone is using a verb with the strict dictionary definition versus when someone is using a verb to invoke a feeling or emotion out of the connotative version. So for background, they've already gone over this. We've gone over this before, so there are going to be kids that would be able to help me feed through this, but it would more so be me going over it, kind of getting feedback from them on where they are, and then kind of moving like a mini quiz of I would have kids in that moment before we dive into a text, like popcorn, and give me examples of each. So that's the part I'm going to focus on because I want to make sure that my popcorning is right, because then it'll be easy to do it in hopes of when I'm reading the story with them. But if they can popcorn on their own, then when we be moving to small group and independent practice, they should be able to do it on their own as well. So, I use a lot of technology in my room, so typically there would be something on this board. So we're just gonna act on it. We're gonna set the line in and see. Okay. So, alright, class, so, what's up, friends? Alright, so we're going to go back over figurative language today. We all know what that is, but I'm seeing a little struggle with that. So when I went over our SOL data, some of you crushed figurative language. You're like, simply this, metaphor that. And then some of you, not so much. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over figurative language. We're going to really pinpoint what each type is. We're going to also go over connotative and denotative meaning. And I know you all remember what that is, so we're going to get into that a few. And then we're going to dive into a 6th grade level text to look at the figurative language and connotative speech in that, and then you all will do it on your own, and I'll post small groups. So, as a review, can someone shout out a type of figurative language that we touched on throughout the quarter?
Metaphor.
Metaphor, thank you so much, Alicia. So, right, we got a metaphor, okay? Right. And Tarsa, can you tell me what a metaphor is?
Metaphor, you use like or as.
You know what? What do you do with like or as though? I feel this is where we're having our main issue here. No, Tarsa, you're not wrong. There is a form of figurative language that uses that.
Okay.
But with the metaphor, what are we essentially trying to do with the metaphor?
Describe.
Describe and we're not just describing, are we describing one thing?
Two things.
Yes,
You're comparing.
So, oh, you're hitting it, right? So we are comparing two things, right? And we're making the comparison, right? But with that comparison, how are we using that comparison?
Phone a friend.
We need to phone a friend, Kevin. How are we using this comparison?
I don't know.
You don't know. Alicia, you brought it up
I
to
guess
me.
you're
You
right.
happen to know?
You're comparing them to each other?
Absolutely, right? We're making a comparison between these two things. Alright, so you're saying like or as. Can someone help guide to her so she's asking the phone a friend? Is there a class? Is there a classmate that can pick up the phone and help her know when we make that comparison with like or as? Because we don't do it here, we do it with what?
Simile.
Oh my gosh, Kevin, thank you so much for picking up her call.
Thanks.
She really appreciated it. So, alright, so this is also a comparison, but with that like or as. So, can someone give me an example of a simile? Tania, you're a little quiet. I think from you.
Alicia is as beautiful as the sun.
Oh my gosh, that's great, right? So, Alicia is as beautiful as the sun, right? We've taken Alicia and compared it to what?
The sun.
And we've used what words?
As.
As well as. So, Alicia is as beautiful.
As.
Right, so we didn't use black. I tricked you up there. Trick up. I'll let you guys know that. So, right, so it's simile. So, if that is how we would compare it with the simile, how would we compare it with the metaphor? Now, this is the bonus question for $1 million. Kevin, you love hearing a version of breakthrough. How did you take Tania's sentence and turn it into a metaphor?
Not really sure.
Alright, so let's break this sentence down. So, if Alicia
It's
is.
a shining beacon of light.
Oh my goodness. Alicia just hit
Alicia
right on the
is a
head.
shining beacon of light.
Right, we've compared Alicia to that beacon of light, but what did we not use?
Like or
Oh my
as.
goodness, you guys are mega million superstars. Alicia's got $1 million. So the biggest difference between a metaphor and a simile is that word choice of like or as. We're doing the same exact thing. We are making a comparison between two things, but it's all about our word choice when we're doing such.
Good on that.
Boom.
That was beautiful.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
I learned so much right then.
I teach first grade. That was all real. I was like, I don't know what
So
to say.
we have 3 minutes to give Julia some feedback that is going to help her improve this plan, like what she's in front of her kids this week. So go ahead and give it to her.
I literally have one thing. Is your spelling on the board?
No, listen.
That's the only thing.
It's not
She
how
said
you
it was
spell simile
technology
or
up there.
Listen, usually I have technology words. Simile would have
Big
been.
smiley.
It's okay.
I didn't get that
It
one.
would have been. So, and also I can tell my kids still work with me. I'm a work in progress. So sometimes I'm going to spell things wrong, but don't send me and do it
I'm
all.
only doing it because I'm such a big stickler on spelling that like anytime I see it.
Yes, thank you.
One thing that I like to do with my kids, especially on something that they're struggling with, is I try to give them very little. So I would literally have started off by saying, what's your overall, what is it called? What's your overall thing? Figurative language. So I would let them more so do most of the talking and the coaching and the guiding. So have someone throw it out there and then literally say, okay, so can someone allow, I think, the students to do more of the guiding and on like naming the types of figurative language, giving the definitions, and really me sometimes taking a step back. Because even with my first graders, I have found that I can say the same exact thing, but because it's coming out of my mouth, which they hear so much, that it doesn't connect for them. So really allowing, I mean, I think you did a very good job at facilitating the conversation, but really throwing the ball into their court and letting them like grapple with it. And even if it's like whole group not working out, breaking them out into groups and letting them, you know, try to like 2 minutes trying to figure it out together and throw it back out there.
I know you, since you're reteaching it, I think it's really good to go over it. I think with something like this, you can definitely do like a jigsaw puzzle type of activity where you have like simile, metaphor, like just different cards on the board, and you'll have like simile, metaphor, like, as, is, and then you can have like a couple of examples of some of these metaphors and have them arranged on the board where these cards go and like set them up. I know for second grade whenever I do something like that with my kids, they were like all on it. But overall, I think like your explanation was really good. You were very, very short and sweet, and it wasn't like dragging on, you know.
And I think your energy was really high. I think a push for you, particularly because I like pulled up your plan, is that 60% of your kids actually didn't get this. So like, in looking at your data, 20% of them, like everyone grew, but like 60% of them still didn't like hit the goal. So like, how can you have them like overall say like, I'm going to work you up into figurative language. I know like the hugest part of your plan is doing this whole group and then having everyone move in like small group rotations. How can you be even more concrete? So like, to Alicia's point, they do this jigsaw and they realize like, actually it's not all a figurative language. Like I really just don't get personification. Like, do you have a personification station that they get to go to first based on like their own understanding, and then like you're moving, you know, like to that space, but allowing them, because they have had this at the beginning of the year, their second SLO, you have seen growth, allowing them to have some choice, but like setting them up for success. So saying like, you're gonna figure this out. I want you to like test yourself based on like where you think you need to go. And then if you realize like the kid is in a group where they don't need to go, then you move them to the right place, but like having them be a little bit more invested in like how they're spending their time this past grade, because this is like the third time you're now having them do some lesson of this sort.
So one thing that I'd say is, if 40% of your kids got this, I feel like when you're doing this popcorn activity, you're going to hear from that 40%, and the other 60% is going to be silent. It's going to be not paying attention, not caring. I mean, just like, I don't know if they're going to get anything from that discussion, just because they're not going to be the ones talking or figuring it out on their own. So, I mean, it's good to go over it quickly, obviously, and remind everybody what it is. I just think that, I mean, this happens with me all the time. I have a classroom full of silent kids, and then like a couple of people who get it, and then they get it for the whole class, and I feel like that's not holding the rest of the class accountable.
Yeah, I definitely will take all that in consideration, because it's not like they don't. My kids won't necessarily get off task one because they're like okay with me, but you know, but they won't as I can engage. Or what I find is some of them actually do know it, or like in that moment they bounce back because like maybe they didn't put it on the test, but they have that moment, but they're so used to the other kids speaking, like in this scenario, they're so used to the listening versus that they'll really say, I don't know, when they actually might know. So something that I've been trying to do is really allowing a lot of group activities where they're not on spotlight, but they feel like they can speak on the topic. So I think that incorporating some type of jigsaw, or I like to do, they love writing on flip chart paper and putting it up. I don't know if that makes them feel like very teacher worthy, but like a flip chart could be where I literally give them a topic and they just like tell me everything.
Or even just like group discussion first, and then maybe you can call on kids who don't usually have a chance to
You
talk.
also are so animated. I feel like you can start off your lesson with something like calling out on a kid that barely ever talks, and like thinking of a metaphor or some type of figurative language about him or her, and then have like students think of metaphors for each other. Nice metaphor. That could go one or the other.
That could go left.
That could
right.
go real life.
They could
But
start
I
joning
think
each
that
other.
could be like a funny one where like you picked names out of a hat and then have them think of the metaphor or a simile about that person and have them come up and share, and like that could be like a that's really funny, and then that could be like I know for me I have moments from school where I'm like, I know what onomatopoeia is because I had a teacher literally like go off about onomatopoeia. Now I'm like, I know how to spell it, I know what, like, you know, so like those moments where you kind of like remember and those stick with you for life, and that could be something that can be like, oh my god, someone thinks I'm a shining beacon of light, and then that'll be in my mind forever.
Thank you all for that feedback. I'm definitely gonna incorporate it because I want to see growth. And they know, it's like I know my kids know it, but it's like I want them to put it on the paper.
Yeah.
Alright, take it away, girl.
Alrighty. So you just want me, let me make sure before I start this. You just want me to go over like where my students are as far as academically, things that I'm implementing, and you want me to actually act out.
Yeah.
What do you want me to actually act out? I can
What-
do very easily.
Yeah, so like whatever you tell us, like whatever piece you want us to grow, I'm imagining it's gonna be like product, like for a small group or something like that. So So just give us some overall context on like where your kids are in this place in their learning, and then we are your students.
Okay. That'll be interesting. Alrighty. So, as you guys know, primary, we focus a lot, not necessarily when we're on growth, we're looking at our growth on our reading. So, in my class, I currently only have 56 of my students who are reading on grade level. And so, like, my range of grade level, my range of reading level in my class is a 4, and my highest is a 24. And so, I daily work with 4 groups. Every group I read for 20 minutes in a rotation. And so, one thing that has prevented most of my kids from being able to advance to the next level is just their accuracy rate. And if you look at that data even closer, a lot of them won't look beyond the first letter. So if they're reading a word and they see a W, they want it to be what? It could be wait, it could be where, it could be who. But they want to look at that first letter, and instead of taking that time to either stop and self-correct, stop to make sure it makes sense, is they just keep going. And that's really been, I've noticed from my lowest kids to even my higher kids, that's kept them from advancing. So one of the strategies, we teach strategies in small group, has been looking at a word beyond the first letter. So I guess I'll give you an example of a lesson like that.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
I don't think it.
Alrighty. So like normally I always open up my guided reading group with going over 5 things that all good readers do. So and normally the kids will say it, but since you guys may not know that, I'll do it for you. So hello guys. So today we are going to read Busy's Watch. But before we start with our book on Busy's Watch, let's go over the 5 things that all good readers do. The first thing, all good readers look at the picture. So as you're reading, yes, you are looking at the words, but if you get to an unknown word that you get to an unknown word, stop, look at the picture, and that picture can help you figure out what that word is. 2, all good readers chunk their words. So if you get to a word that's big or that you may only know a piece of it, focus on the piece that you know and then try to sound out those rest of those sounds and stretch out your word. 3, good readers always get their mouths ready. So if we get to a word like the word, if Ms. Wood holds up the word cat, if I see that word and I'm not really sure, I already know that the letter C says K. So I'm getting my mouth ready for that word. Even if I don't know all the word, I know that first sound. 4, good readers make sure that as they're reading, it's making sense. So if I read a sentence that says, the elephant came, and then I say, the elephant came lunch, does that make sense to you? And normally they'll be like, no. And I'll be like, okay, so let's go back and look at that sentence. So as you're reading, I want you to make sure you're reading the words correctly, but also you're listening to yourself read to make sure you're making sense. And the 5th one, good readers always go back and check. So like when we're reading, if I read a sentence, I go back and make sure that what I read was correct. So today we are going to focus on looking beyond the first letter. If I will probably most likely I have a whiteboard. If Ms. Wood writes the word what? W-H-A-T. So if I'm reading this and I say, I look at that. What does the first sound make?
Wow.
Great job. So if I keep reading, let's go through all of our sounds. So we already know that W-H says what? What about A? What sound does A make? Ah. And what about T? T. So let's blend that all together. If I was going to blend that, I would say what? But we already know, I say whacked. Is that a real word?
No.
No, already. So remember we said sometimes our vowels make a different sound. So this word is actually what? Can we blend that all together? Don't forget to hold your word in your hand. I want to see everybody holding your word. Alrighty. What? Let's stretch it all together. What? Great job. You can drop your word. Alrighty. So what about if Ms. Wood changes some of those letters and now I have W, A, I, T. Is this what? Do you know what this word says?
It's what? Because there's a W there.
It's a W? Correct. There is a W there and there is a T. But did we look at those letters in the middle?
I did not miss what I said.
You did not look at those letters in the middle. So one thing that all good readers do is as we are reading, I'm looking at my first letter, but then I'm also looking at my words in the middle because some of the letters change and that's how we have different words. So then I would go work through how letters change. And normally I would start and I'll do like 3 words from the actual text. Sometimes I'll add a different ending. So like if it was what, I might add an S or like ing to the end and try to check them out. But that's been a strategy we have been like trying to get there.
So let's give some feedback on what we're thinking. So I think like on the positive side, the fact that like your kids, like you have like clear reading rules and like they're grounding each lesson and like they know them, they clearly are invested in them, and then there's visuals to go along with their reading. So I'm either like literally I'm seeing it, but then like you're expecting me to do something with my body with it as well. So like I need to like hold my letter, hold my word, drop my word, or listen to my word, all the things. I think like as far as an area of growth, one thing I'm noticing is that like if I am struggling with like my processing speed or time, like I don't get that. So the expectation is that like I see the word and I should immediately know the sound, potentially versus saying like, so this is our word, like take 30 seconds to think in your brain what this word may be, because like there's gonna be some kids who need more time, but they never actually get the time to figure it out because I've been in your class and like there's some kids who are like ready to say what the word is, so that's not fair to all of the kids. So how can you like actually be in your strategy, build out some time so like everyone gets 30 seconds, and like some of your kids don't need the 30 seconds, and that's okay, right? So like you can say, if you don't need the 30 seconds, like what are some other words you're thinking about in your head that sound like this word, right? But like some of your kids literally just need 30 seconds to think about that word, and like giving it to them could be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean that's been feedback that I've received. So thank you. I'll continue your comment.
I know you don't have the resources in front of you, but something that I like to do is, for example, especially if you're reading the Food You Watch and it's like a word in the book that you know kids are gonna struggle with, I like to open up the book and just be like, here's the word, and then like, what does it look like? Can we read the sentence? How are they using this word? And then I'll go through and I'll be like, can you find this word again in the book? And like have them go through the book and like find that word. Another thing I like to do with my students, especially like my lower readers, is when we do word work, I'll give them the WH sound, and I'll explicitly say, this is the WH sound. When you see these two letters together, you make the W sound, and then I'll like give them 3 words, like what,